Hi, peeps. You're listening to She's My Cherry Pie, the baking podcast from the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jessie Sheehan. I'm a baker, recipe developer, and author of 4 baking books, including Salty, Cheesy, Herby, Crispy, Snackable Bakes. On each episode, I hang out with the sweetest bakers around and take a deep dive into their signature bakes. Our show is on hiatus right now, but don't worry. We're busy whipping up a delicious new season for you, dropping in early May. In the meantime, we're re-airing some of our favorite episodes from the archives. Today, we're re-airing my chat with Abi Balingit. Abi is a self-taught baker, the creative force behind the Dusky kitchen blog, and the author of Mayumu, Filipino American Desserts Remixed. Since we last spoke, Abi's book won the James Beard Award for Emerging Voice, and she was featured on the cover of Cherry Bombe's Creative Class issue. Abi joins me to talk all about Bibingka, the Filipino rice cake made with coconut milk and baked in banana leaves. We go step by step through her recipe for horchata bibingka, which you can find in her book. She shares the tips, tricks, and ingredients you need to make this delicious treat. I loved chatting with Abi, so stay tuned for our convo. If you want to get the Abi issue of Cherry Bombe, head to cherrybombe.com. A huge thank you to everyone who joined us at Jubilee last weekend. It was an unforgettable day filled with laughter, insightful conversations, and so much incredible food and drink. I loved meeting so many of you, especially those who stopped by the Bakers Meetup at Ghirardelli and everyone who said hi at the Kerrygold Butter Club. I hope everyone enjoyed the day as much as I did. Want to be the first to know about future Cherry Bombe events? Subscribe to Cherry Bombe's newsletter at cherrybombe.com or click the link in our show notes. Peeps, did you know that we have a free She's My Cherry Pie newsletter that coincides with each new episode? It comes out every Saturday morning and shares insights about the guest, their recipe, and other fun tidbits and baking news, like our Cake of the Week. To sign up, head to cherrybombe.substack.com or click the link in our show notes. Now let's check in with today's guest. Abi! So excited to have you on She's My Cherry Pie.
Oh, thank you, Jessie. I'm so excited to be here.
So I have read that you started baking at 13 due to your deep love of the Food Network, and that the internet was essentially like your recipe box, as it were. I also read that you had like a special affection, which I totally get, for all recipes back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
For that website. First of all, if you don't know what All Recipes is, Abby's going to tell you. But also, tell me about the beginning of that. I loved that.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I feel like All Recipes was like a community site and still is active with everyone who can post whatever they're making. Also post the actual straight up recipes, ingredient list, directions. And I used to love being on there just to review recipes. Like I wasn't a poster. I was a lurker and enjoyer. And that's where I kind of learned how to bake for the first time, was really just prowling on those recipes and just talking in that community.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And what kinds of desserts at that time were you gravitating towards?
Oh yeah, I think these were mostly cupcakes. I think there was like one burnt sugar cake recipe on there that I loved. The moist Hershey's special black magic cake recipe, which is honestly the holy grail, I think, of chocolate cake recipes.
Could not agree with you more. For peeps that don't know, there's an incredible, basically one bowl chocolate cake, right? Like on the back of the Hershey can of cocoa. And this incredible frosting that goes with it. That cake is incredible.
So good.
I love that. But you weren't yet embracing Filipino ingredients necessarily in your baking, kind of sticking to what All Recipes was showing you?
Yeah. I think I was mostly motivated by Food Network stars and Asa Cakes. And I guess Candace from Sprinkles Cupcakes was like a huge influence, where I just wanted to make things that I saw on TV.
I love that. And then at 17, you got your first KitchenAid.
Yes.
So then did the desserts get a little more sophisticated, or it was just that your arm wasn't as tired from like all the whisking, etc.?
I think both of those things. I truly was excited because I think it was the first time I could try macarons. And I think that was like a huge thing in that time frame, like 2013, 2011, 2012. It was so exciting to dive straight into that. My parents got it for Christmas, I think it was. And I was so grateful because I just never thought I could get one of those. It was just one of those things you saw at Costco. I was like, it's so expensive. And when you're 17, you have no money. And I'm like, what money do you have?
There are all these great little essays throughout your new cookbook. And in one of them, you describe yourself as the dork who could bake. And I think you're describing a story of when you were making like a bunch of mini cheesecakes in high school. Was that sort of the beginning of the kind of slightly older Abby trying her hand at more sophisticated desserts, or was that just par for the course, cheesecakes?
I think that was honestly just par for the course, just straight up strawberry cheesecakes that you'd find online. And this is a lot of just making it for friends and also for family. But I really was just in AP classes, taking my SATs, doing all those things that were so stressful at the time. And I think baking was really the outlet that was like, I want to de-stress and be relaxed. And that was baking for me.
I love that. So you started your blog in the summer of 2020, Dusky Kitchen, in your tiny Brooklyn kitchen. And you had said that before the pandemic started, a baking blog had been one of your goals, but it kind of took the beginning of the pandemic to get you motivated.
Yeah, I definitely got the domain, I think December of 2019, and I knew I wanted to do it, but it was just a matter of sitting down, actually going on WordPress, actually committing because of the pandemic, of having time in quarantine to sit and reflect on what I really wanted to do, and I think that's when I really dove headfirst into baking.
Baking during the pandemic was sort of your entry into kind of making Filipino food at home. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a point of also desperation, sadness, just really missing my family. And I think that was the motivation of trying to involve more Filipino flavors and concepts into what I was making. And I was nervous because I think my parents never really gave me like recipe books, honestly. And it's a very common problem that we come across with children of immigrants of always just being like, please help. And it's like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And just look at it by sight. I'm just like, I have no instinct for that. And I think power to our parents for really being intuitive cooks and bakers. But for me, I was just like, this is hard when you've never done it before. So I was really relying on both FaceTime and also just like on the internet, again, researching a lot of Filipino baking blogs, a lot of Filipino cookbooks helped me get to this point. I think one of my favorite bakers who also did a blurb for my cookbook was Michelle Lopez from Hummingbird High. Biggest inspiration, I feel like, in the Filipino American space for sure. And it was just exciting getting her blog along with just looking at cookbooks like Filipinex by Angela Damayuga and Ligaya Michon. All are really huge, I guess, influences for me. Because they were doing it, I felt it was more feasible for me to also do the same thing, but in my own way, but just getting the building blocks from them.
Amazing. And when you first started baking and posting things on the blog, I read that you would describe it as fusion, Asian American and Filipino kind of fused together. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you made?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially one of my first recipes was a pork floss miso brownie. And that was one of those things where, again, that not necessarily is Filipino, but a lot of Chinese influence there. And then for the first pasalubong treat box, I also had horchata bibingka. So I don't want to spill too many beans, but that is definitely like a Latinx Filipino fusion for sure.
I love that. And that's a great segue to talking about your boxes. So you started selling your pasalubong boxes, which were your Filipino American fusion box of desserts, in about August of 2020?
Yes, August 2020.
Creating of the boxes and your idea for them was influenced by the Bakers Against Racism bake sales. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that influence and how it got you motivated?
Yeah, I mean, Paula Velez was on this pod as well, but she's a huge influence of, at the time, especially in 2020, the despair that I was mentioning before was also motivated by politically everything going on, Black Lives Matter. I wanted to do something to help. And I think because Paula had started this with Bakers Against Racism, it felt, again, more feasible and you could do it too. And so that's when I dove straight in and was like, I'm scared of showing people what I'm making and for people to actually taste it that don't know me. But I think people really latch on to good things for good intentions and good purposes. And I was really excited that people did want to try what I was making, even though I've never done this before.
It's amazing. Can you tell us what pasalubong means in English or how you translate it and what language it's from?
Yeah. So it is actually Tagalog. And the best way to describe it is just a souvenir from when you're traveling. If I'm going out and about in my day, okay, I'll get some black and white cookies here from New York. I'll get some rugula. Then if I'm going back to the Philippines, then I'll bring that to my family and friends. And this is pasalubong from where I'm from. But it is really fun to do that exchange back and forth because, so much of our family, the diaspora is so large that you're always traveling and always giving back to the people that you love.
We'll be right back. The latest issue of Cherry Bombe magazine is all about love, and I think you're going to love the cover. It features Elona, Olivia, and Adriana Marr, the sister trio that has won everyone's hearts for their message of confidence and body positivity. The issue is full of joyful stories and recipes, and we know the world needs a little more love right now. So we hope you'll pick up a copy. Head to cherrybomb.com or click the link in our show notes, or visit your favorite bookstore or culinary shop to get an issue. Peeps, have you tuned into Radio Cherry Bomb? It's the flagship podcast from Cherry Bomb, hosted by founder Carrie Diamond. Every Monday, Carrie sits down with the most fascinating folks in food, drink, and hospitality, from icons to rising stars. Don't miss her conversations with Ina Garten, Alice Waters, Padma Lakshmi, the Bears, Liza Colon-Zayas, and so many more. Listen to Radio Cherry Bomb on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now back to our guest. And then tell everyone about that Time Out article. Didn't that kind of blow up those boxes?
It's so wild because I think that was 2 days within announcing that kind of box. And my now friend, Emma Orlo, who wrote that piece, was like, hey, like, this is so exciting. Do you want to talk about it? And being in New York is a huge part of the magic of being a baker, in food especially here. And so I think that was the first media experience I'd ever had. Since then, it's blown up, of course, and I'm very grateful for Emma for calling, at least finding. I don't even know how she found me. I think it's just Twitter, again, Instagram, and the magic of the algorithm, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but in this case, good.
So she basically wrote a little piece in Time Out magazine announcing that the boxes would be sold that weekend and where people could go if they wanted to find them. Is that what it was?
Correct, yeah. She interviewed me a little bit and then also just put a spotlight on, hey, get these boxes. They're benefiting Bed-Stuy Strong, which is a mutual aid organization in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so cool. I feel like that was such a hard time, obviously, but also such a really special time because I do feel like there was a lot of lifting up of people and of recognizing cool things that people were doing and wanting to get the word out. And I just remember we were all like, every time I heard there was like a pop-up or a this or that, I was like, oh my God, I have to go. Like it was right because we were so tired of being by ourselves. And I wanted to try all the things that everyone was making and get that opportunity. So I love it that she did that for you and that article came out. And then from then on, they kind of sold out, right?
Yeah. I mean, ever since then, I think it was 30 minutes, like, sold out. And I don't make that many. I think upwards 50 about. But yeah, it's always like limited spaces. And I think the pre-order system works really well, just so you know how to anticipate how much to make. And also, it's kind of like, if people are going to go and be active and actually want to go to your pop-up, then they will pre-order and then they will show up and put that money forward, which is really crucial in like buying ingredients and all that stuff that you have to do for bake sales like this.
I think that's really important, and I'm so glad you mentioned that for people wanting to do something like what you did. What Abby's saying is that you make sure that the people can order what they want before the pop-up happens, which is great. And then do you have any boxes there that somebody who just stopped by could grab or not really?
Oh my gosh, I think of all the times I did it, maybe 6 rounds of Pasta Long boxes that rarely anyone has left behind a box. But if they did, then we would sell that. And give that to whoever who wants it. But the embarrassing thing is that one time I miscounted in the way that I oversold. And I was just in shambles. And my family from Jersey came and I was like, is it okay if I give away your box to someone? Just because it's like you can't disappoint strangers. And I feel like your friends and your family are really nice, but I felt terrible. That was the worst. That was the worst.
I feel like that would be me like every week. I'd be like, oh no.
It's funny because bakers are supposed to be good at math and science, but I'm like, math and science are my worst subjects. And when you're in the moment and you're doing volume baking, and you get it, Jessie, it's really hard to keep a straight head on when you have so many moving parts all the time. And so that was one of the times where I was like, oh, and you learn from that. I learned very the hard way from that.
For the listeners who are interested in writing cookbooks or write them themselves, tell us how the boxes led to a cookbook.
Yeah, I mean, I would post every dessert from the tree boxes. Just after it happened, I'd be like, okay, well, here's the recipes that I used. And then I would just post the pictures. And I think for one time, I was just, again, baking for fun, nothing wild. And it wasn't even the tree box. I was just, again, baking. And it was the burnt sugar cupcakes with a 5-spice type brittle and like Laogan Ma chili crisp on top. And that was when my literary agent, Emmy, reached out to me and was like, hey, I love what you're doing. Are you thinking of writing a cookbook? And I was like, no. I was like, oh, in my head, I was like, no, I'm not. But now that you mention it, and it was just like, I'm in my plotting era. And yeah, like I think that was the jumping point where the internet has opened so many doors for me. First from Emma interviewing me for Time Out, and then to my agent finding me on Twitter. It's astounding how that translates into in-person connections. I have not met my agent in real life yet, but again, the book is in your hands now, so it's worked.
Now it is time to discuss horchata bibingka. I read that rice and coconut milk are actually cornerstones of Filipino desserts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought this is so great because this is the perfect dessert for us to chat about with you since it includes both of those cornerstones. First things first, could you describe a traditional bibingka for us?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So basically, it's like a coconut milk rice cake. And it's baked in banana leaves. There's usually a salted duck egg on top and also cheese, usually Edam cheese, which is like the Dutch cheese, but we call it queso de bola. And it's, through trade, I think that's how we ended up getting this cheese. But it's a huge part of Filipino desserts. I feel like everyone uses it for toppings for different types of breads and pastries.
So is a bibingka slightly savory traditionally?
Yes, slightly savory. So it's funny because I feel like now I've been known to do sweet and savory. And for this recipe, I'm like eliminating the savory and putting for more sweet. But that's like the fun part about playing around with recipes. You just really get to do whatever you want with whatever instance that you're trying to make.
I love that. You also did something interesting with this recipe, as I think you do with all the recipes in the book, but this particular recipe marries flavors from your favorite beverage, horchata.
Yes.
Could you describe that beverage for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up in Stockton, California, San Jose, California. So being California, you're always around a lot of great Mexican restaurants, a lot of great burrito spots. And I would always get horchata with a burrito, honestly. That's like my go-to meal. And horchata is just this really delicious rice cinnamon drink. And it's present in like other Latinx countries. And I just loved it. It's kind of a little bit thick, but not too thick. I think they just obviously strain out all the rice and everything, but it still has this viscosity that I really love. And its flavor is just so rich. I think it's just cinnamon is just so good.
Well, also, it's such a lovely idea to combine that. It's already, we're going to talk about the ingredients of the horchata, so don't worry, peeps. But I love the idea of there's rice in that drink, and then the cinnamon with the coconut must be so delicious. It just sounds like yum.
It just came like naturally to me to be like, oh, horchata has like rice, and I love bibingka. It also has rice, so maybe we add coconut milk to the horchata, and then we could feel like,
Brilliant.
A new thing.
So smart. So first things first for this recipe, and I think this will be happening the night before you're going to make your horchata.
Yes.
You're going to place some long grain rice, and I think you say jasmine rice?
Yeah, I just have a lot of jasmine rice. I feel like you could use any long grain, but I always have jasmine rice.
So you're going to have your long grain rice, jasmine, and a cinnamon stick. Is there a brand of cinnamon or cinnamon sticks that you're...
Oh, I do feel like I just randomly had McCormick when I was making this,
I have to say I use McCormick.
Yeah, it's just there.
It happens.
It's widely available.
Yes. So we have our long grain rice, jasmine. We have a cinnamon stick.
Mm-hmm.
We put that in a small bowl and pour some boiling water on top and just let that kind of sit overnight on the counter, yes?
Yes. You're kind of softening up the cinnamon stick, also the rice. And so overnight, it just ends up being easier to blend later.
Love. The next day, you're going to strain out the rice and the cinnamon stick?
So first you actually blend it just so you
Oh,
get
the blending
all the
happens first.
flavor incorporated, and then you strain out all the gritty stuff because it still, remains hard even overnight after soaking. And so it is important to get rid of that.
You blend the cinnamon stick as well?
Yeah, you blend
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, so cool.
Yes, I know. I feel like it doesn't seem intuitive at all, but then you go ahead.
But it's probably softened a bit overnight, so it's not quite as hard.
Yes.
So you blend those two things together, then you strain that, and then you cook it with some coconut milk.
Yes, I definitely want to strengthen the flavor in the resulting glaze, and by thickening up and basically reducing down that mixture with coconut milk, it's first incorporating the flavor of the coconut from the coconut milk, but also just like having a bit of oomph instead of just like straight up, just like that thin liquid from the horchata.
And you're going to cook that until reduced, and then you're going to cool that to room temperature.
Yeah. So it's cooling while you do the next step.
Perfect. So now we're going to make the cakes, and I have to say, and I say cakes because it's like cupcakes, essentially.
Yeah.
Although, do people make this as one big...
Yes, you traditionally would just have in like a bigger, I would say I usually do it in a cast iron if it
Yep.
was like a large size Bibingka. But it's nice, like I wanted to do some that were individual servings. And so, yeah, there's Bibingka come in all different sizes, but I just wanted these to be like handheld, single serving.
I love that. And I also love that the cakes, these little cupcakes are almost one bowl because I love a one bowl recipe and basically the queen. And then I also love that there's no stand mixer.
Oh, yeah. No.
So it's like, I mean, even though I love that you've had your stand mixer since you were 17, I'm also happy to see it not being used in this recipe.
Oh, no. I know. I don't want to like make anyone like wash more dishes than they have to.
Okay, so we're going to heat the oven to 350 degrees. What's super cool about this recipe is that rather than use cupcake liners, you're using banana leaves.
Yeah.
Just so I understand, if you were making bibingka, let's say in your cast iron, as you said, would you just have one huge banana leaf underneath it?
Yeah. A lot of the times, too, I feel like it depends, like, which banana leaf you get, the shape of it. Like, sometimes you have to layer them a bit just to get full coverage of the cast iron. And for this recipe specifically, you cut out little rounds, and so that you can actually have, like, little cups, basically, for each one.
I love it. I guess do banana leaves usually come frozen?
Yes, usually come frozen. It's really hard. I don't know where you can find fresh banana leaves in the States. It's definitely more of a Southeast Asian tropical environment type of good to have. But usually you just thaw it out, and I like to wipe it down just because it might be a little dirty still. So
I was going to ask you because I know there's the direction to wipe, and I wasn't sure if you were wiping away moisture or if you were wiping away...
Both of those things, yeah.
Okay.
So you just want to make sure it's like a clean surface, and it becomes a bit more pliable instead of just, it's hard to cut when it's still frozen.
Yeah. Where would we find banana leaves?
I usually find them in like the frozen section. And I've luckily been able to find it in not just a Southeast Asian specific grocery store, but literally like Seatown here and Food Emporium here. And a lot of times it's with the Goya section has like a lot of different, not just banana leaves, but they have like frozen passion fruit pulp and frozen, all these things that, again, in that one frozen section right there.
That's great. That's great. And is there a favorite brand, or is there usually one brand of banana leaves when you go?
Yeah. In this case, if you're trying to go to a general store, it might not always be a Southeast Asian brand or anything. So I would typically, in shortness of time, there's Goya, but also there's this Filipino brand called Tropico, and they have banana leaves. So I love them too. But it's more of just like I have to actively find them. Whatever banana leaves you can get, I hope you can find it somehow.
So you cut them into these 5-inch circles, and by this time they've softened enough that you can poke them down into your cupcake tin or your muffin tin?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. I haven't baked with banana leaves before. I wondered, what are they adding to the recipe? Is it flavor?
Yeah, I mean, I think the flavor, it's undeniable that there's something earthy and smoky when it comes in contact with oven heat. It definitely emits something that it adds to the taste of the actual bibingka. If you can't find banana leaves, parchment paper is fine or muffin liner is fine, but it is a totally different kind of dessert without it. So I definitely would say, yeah, there's something about banana leaves. And you can't eat the banana leaves. This is like a natural thing from this earth, and you just use it as a liner versus getting paper or anything else. This was definitely a use case of it being just part of just whatever pantry that someone has. Like, you have access to this in the Philippines so easily. Banana leaves are everywhere. So just cut one up and go use it.
So you're going to brush the banana leaves with some melted coconut oil.
Yes.
And I had 2 questions. One, is there like a favorite kind of pastry brush that you use at home that you would recommend? And then I also wondered if you had a favorite brand of coconut oil that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I do feel like I have the OXO one. I love that one. That's a great pastry brush. But also coconut oil, I do feel like randomly there's like the Target generic brand. I don't know if you know, it's like Good and Gather or something. They definitely have coconut oil that I use for sure.
Great. Now we're going to whisk together some rice flour and some glutinous rice flour. So I wanted to know, first of all, if there's a brand of whisk that you love. Would that be OXO again or something else?
I actually have, luckily, these like material whisk. Oh, they had this amazing one that is very large. I don't even know. What is that one shape, Jessie? This is very niche now, but it is like balloon, but it's so great. It has a lot of sturdiness to it.
That's good. You can say sturdiness to it. I like that. And then what about the rice flour and the glutinous rice flour? Is there a brand of those that you like?
Yeah. So actually, by sight, I know it most, but it's called Erawan, and it's Thai brand, again, of like rice flours. But one of them is green and one of them is red. And so you will specifically see something that has to say glutinous rice, and the other thing is just regular rice. And glutinous rice flour kind of adds to like the chewiness of desserts. And so anytime you had mochi or anything like that, like it uses glutinous rice flour. So sometimes like mochiko is another alternative you can use.
I was going to ask you what it was adding.
Yes.
I wondered if it was the chew. Yes. So we're whisking our rice flour, our glutinous rice flour together with granulated sugar, with baking powder, with kosher salt, and with ground cinnamon. So you're whisking together your dry ingredients, then you make a little well in the center. Listeners might know, but a well is just when you move your ingredients away into like almost create a little hole or a little well in the center of the bowl. And you are going to add some lightly whisked eggs and melted unsalted butter, unsweetened coconut milk, which is nice. That's going to pick up from the horchata as well. I love that. And then some vanilla. Is there a brand of vanilla that you like?
It's funny because I had so much of Kirkland vanilla also from doing everything in bulk, especially with the treat boxes. It lasted me like a year. And I'm like, no other vanilla extract is going to do that for me unless I spend $40 or something. So it is a cost-effective but great vanilla extract, I think.
Fantastic. And you're going to whisk that together until smooth. And then it's just about 3 tablespoons of batter into each cavity, each banana leaf lined cavity, baking for 20 to 22 minutes until a toothpick comes out clean.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you had a favorite cake tester. I love using long wooden skewers. Sometimes people like using a little paring knife. Is there something that you like specifically?
I think because these are only 3 tablespoons of batter, so typically if it's like a higher cake or something, I would use a long cake tester, but toothpicks are just fine because of the height that these are, maybe like 3 inches maybe. So it's fine.
Do they rise to the top of the cavity, or are they sort of a shorter cupcake?
They are, I would say, a little bit of a shorter cupcake because like when the next step, whenever we do the glaze, like you can have a bit of it where it pulls. And so it's not necessarily like running off the edge, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. We let our cupcakes cool, and you just leave them in the tin in the banana leaves while they cool?
Usually for at least a few minutes or so. You can easily use the banana leaves and take them out and place them on the wire rack.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that's honestly when it's a time kind of thing. It's funny because like in the cookbook, you have to be very specific about these things. But I'm like, it's fine. I mean, obviously you don't want the residual heat to overcook it too much. But I think it's going to be okay. It won't get overcooked that way. I don't know.
It is hard to learn how to be so precise about the directions when you're writing a cookbook and with baking recipes. Like, I'll just say, whisk until smooth, and then the editor will be like, how many seconds?
Well, I don't know.
No. Then you have to go back, make it again, or like just be like,
and time
40.
No, I know. And yeah, so for this case, if you have the time, like ideally just take them out and put them on the wire rack. But again, if you're running low, just put the tin on the wire rack. It's fine.
And you're going to serve them in those little banana leaves, correct?
Yeah.
I love that. So now we're going to make the glaze. There's going to be a sprinkle of coconut flakes on top. So I was going to ask, is there a brand of coconut flakes that you like?
Yeah. It's like that one that's like a blue bag.
Baker's?
Yes, thank God. Thank you for just... Honestly, yeah, that one's a great. I always use that
So it's sweetened coconut that you're putting on top?
Yeah, this one is sweetened coconut. I do think it's not necessarily, again, traditional topping for the bibingka, but I just love that it is first common to find. I think it's sometimes harder for people to find unsweetened sometimes in the store. Like, I think that's like the first thing I'll see at any grocery store. But yeah, I do like that it adds a little extra sweetness again with this recipe.
I love coconut. Sweetened coconut or coconut flakes. I love it all.
Yeah.
And you say to toast them in a saucepan. Is that like toasting maybe on the stovetop in a cast iron, or do you like to put them in the oven? How do you like to toast?
Oh, we have this one really large saucepan at home that is not cast iron, but it's nonstick even. And it's quite large. Maybe I'm like doing this motion, not that it helps on the podcast, but I'm like holding around my 20 inches maybe diameter. But I do like using that just because you can easily use your spatula to move it around quite easily, so you can see.
I love that you're doing it on the stovetop. I'm always sticking it in my toaster oven, or I'm putting it in if I'm preheating my oven anyway, I'll stick it on a cookie sheet in the oven.
Oh,
and then just like shake the sheet maybe halfway through to move it around a little. When you do it on the stovetop, what's nice is you are using a spatula and you're moving it around all the time. But even in the oven, it works.
Oh, thank you, Jessie.
You're
That's a good
welcome,
tip. I'm nervous about that sometimes, though, because I feel like I don't pay attention sometimes, and it's
I know.
if you don't look away, and then you have to open it. But
I can't tell you how many times I've burnt coconut or burnt nuts. and my toaster oven are in the oven. And you're like, what's that smell? Oh, no.
I think nuts are harder because they're so much more expensive. It pains me to hear.
It's so painful when
So
you forget.
painful.
But then you're worried if I put them in anyway, are they going to make everything taste burnt? So
honestly. And at that point, it's really not worth unfortunately. And that's when you know how to call it. And I feel like that's the hardest thing because I feel like everyone who bakes and is intimidated by baking, it's the waste that happens when you make a fatal mistake. And sometimes it happens and you have to move on and don't be too hard on yourself. But it has happened. Browning butter, toasting anything, it can go awry really quickly.
It's so hard. And also, I think to some degree, all of us bakers are very anal and like rule-oriented and following direction-oriented. So it always seems out of character to us. Like, how did I mess that up?
I know.
I'm usually on top of it.
And you're baking for years and years. It doesn't even matter. Like, it happens to the best of us, honestly.
It doesn't. It doesn't. We are going to finish up this recipe, but I did want to mention, since we're kind of talking about it, you have a great essay, I think. Maybe it's in a headnote in the book, but just talking about your preoccupation with perfection that you have figured out how to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like a thing about letting go a lot. And I think I love control. Like, I want to control everything about my life and every little aspect of it. But I think getting older, it's every year I realize that's like impossible to do. And some things are out of your control and other things you can, obviously check the oven and make sure, it's too brown, then I have to take it out. But especially with baking, I feel like because I started and I didn't know anything when I first started to bake. And now I feel like I know so much more and I'm continuing to learn so much more. I think it's that appreciation for not knowing is a good thing. And I guess no matter how long I bake for, years and years of my life, there's still things I will not know until maybe I'm like 7 years old and I'm in the kitchen. I'm like, wow, that's like a new technique I've never heard of. And that's the exciting part. And I think that's, for me, being a perfectionist, now I'm like trying my best to still say that like I value good work and my work ethic and all that stuff. But I still want to have fun and I still want to enjoy baking. And I think there's like this balance that you have to do. And that's where I'm at, is always learning how to balance and juggle. And so we're at like the air conditioning section of just like homeostasis or whatever it is you're always trying to reach this point, but it's okay if you're not at that point.
I love that. Thank you for inspiring us mid-recipe. Now we're going to make the glaze. So we toast the coconut, and then you're going to whisk some sifted powdered sugar, some kosher salt, some ground cinnamon, the horchata that you made the night before and finished up that morning, and your vanilla until smooth. And then drizzle the glaze. Should the cupcakes be room temperature by the time you...
Oh, yeah. I think by that point it should be room temperature, especially since you were toasting the coconut after that.
And then you're kind of drizzling the glaze on top.
I love to just literally take a half tablespoon and just pour it on top and like let the dome kind of just let it fall through. And I think because of your banana leaf liner, it catches whatever doesn't like run off of it. And so I love doing that method. It's just easy, just like scoop, 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 scoop.
And does it also, it sounds like it's pretty moist, does it kind of absorb the glaze as well?
Oh, yeah. I think because this glaze is a little, I wouldn't say on the thick side. And I do prefer that just because like I think visually it looks a little bit better. And I think you get that too. It's just if it's too thin, then you can't really even see the glaze.
Yeah.
And so what I also really like is adding the toasted coconut on top is kind of like a dam. I put a lot of coconut. I don't even know what I said in that recipe. I just sprinkle as much as because there is a lot of coconut yield in that. And so put as much coconut as you want and it just settles the glaze.
I love that. And then serve immediately.
Yeah.
Yes?
Enjoy. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. I love that and I can't wait to make that. Sounds so delicious. I just wanted to talk about a couple of other amazing recipes from the book. Halo Halo Baked Alaska with ube jam, because that is the recipe on the cover of the book. It looks like heaven to me. It's a baked Alaska, but it's with the flavors of Halo Halo, which is, I think I read this, the bite that's most emblematic of Filipino cuisine.
Yeah.
And it means mix, mix.
Yeah. I mean, it's because the Philippines, it's so hot. So it's a tropical environment. So I love the shaved ice desserts that you get. It's very refreshing. And so a traditional halo halo is like sweetened red bean, there's jackfruit, there's like these coconut gel, there's evaporated milk and ice cream and leche flan. You have a bite of everything all at once and you get to mix it all in your bowl. And then for the baked Alaska, just translating those flavors, I wanted, again, like the ube, mango, ice cream, but also I make a granita with jackfruit steeped in evaporated milk. And then I add in the halo halo mix that you get. So all the beans that I mentioned, the coconut gel, all that stuff is inside the dome of the baked Alaska. And then there's a coconut sponge at the very bottom. And so just torching that, like I still think it's emblematic, hopefully, of the original recipe or dessert, but just in a different way.
And the granita is the shaved ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. So it's like different but the same.
Yes.
And I also like that it's a combo. It's not necessarily easy, but you're not asking people to make ice cream.
No.
So, so that there's like a shortcut-ish written into the recipe, which is nice.
Yeah. It's funny because if you had chosen that, Jess, I feel like we would be here a little while. Just because I know it's not necessarily, again, a hard recipe. It's just time intensive.
Yes.
But the steps hopefully are digestible for everyone, but it is a long recipe.
Yeah.
The longest in the book for sure.
Yeah. I love that. And I loved Baked Alaska, so I love any kind of twist on that. And then finally, I wanted to mention the Filipino flag cookies.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
tell people about those?
I feel like not a lot of people ask me about them, but they're basically inspired by black and white cookies here in New York. But instead of chocolate and vanilla, one of the colored sides is actually jasmine extract flavored. And so the Filipino national flower is the sampaguita, which is a family of the jasmine flower. I wanted to put that. But also it's like red, blue, and yellow and white, the colors of the Filipino flag. And I just love them. I think it's so whimsical. And then Katie, my food stylist for the book, she added like the little fresh jasmine on top. And it's just stunning. I think in the book, that is one of my favorite recipes to look at just because, and I also like the taste, but it's also just a great, great recipe, I think.
I also think it's a wonderful mix of Abby because it's like Filipino, but it's also American with the black and white cookie. It's like, that's such a cool mixture there. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, Abby. And I just wanted to say that you are my cherry pie.
Oh, Jessie, I love you so much. Thank you for everything.
I love you. That's it for today's show. Don't forget to follow She's My Cherry Pie on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And tell your pals about us. She's My Cherry Pie is a production of the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. Our producers are Carrie Diamond, Catherine Baker, and Jenna Sadu. Thank you so much for listening to She's My Cherry Pie, and happy baking!